Yeah, so I actually Miriam, sorry. But my name is Miriam Ortiz. And yeah, I just started in the Denver region with Q, so I've only been in this role for like 2 weeks, but I was previously the North Region Fellow. And so, yeah.
And hi everyone, I'm Q. Thank you for having us here. I go by Shile and I am the Denver Regional Organizer at CERC. So just a little bit about CERC in case folks don't know. We are a coalition made up of about 80 to 90 plus organizations across all of Colorado that just comes together to uplift and support immigrant justice. And we do a lot of the work through policy and advocacy. So some of the bills that you've seen, that you might have heard seen passed, that have been passed recently are expanding Medicaid for undocumented children and pregnant people, as well as expanding driver's license offices in the DMV. So we do kind of like little things like that, and we will get started. Just kidding. There we go.
Yeah, so we always have to preface this presentation by letting y'all know that we aren't lawyers and this information isn't supposed to constitute any type of legal advice. We're just kind of working off some facts that you can actually use to protect yourself, but anything beyond that, really, you should look for a lawyer if you have any other questions.
Okay, we have pop quizzes in here, so I hope y'all are ready.
Yeah, so to start off the presentation, does anybody know what the difference between the police, the sheriff, and ICE is? Does anybody want to take a guess?
Is it like jurisdiction, like where they oversee?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so that's part of it. And then the other part is like what they enforce, right? So the police, they're accountable to our local communities, right? The municipality. Sheriffs, they cover the county and jail. They also serve like any like official documents. And then the state patrol, they cover the highways. And then ICE is the federal government. And so they're accountable not to communities, but to enforce federal immigration law. So that means that police and sheriffs, they're not really supposed to enforce that kind of law, but we'll get into more of that.
And so usually when we start this presentation, we like to go through a brief history lesson on how Colorado came to be, just because I don't think a lot of folks know that Colorado actually used to be one of the most anti-immigrant states in the nation. We were up there with Georgia and Arizona, and we had a bill that we'll go into a little bit called the Show Me Your Papers Law, which promoted a lot of racial bias and was one of the biggest ways of the pipeline to deportation for our community members. And through this history, we'll end it on a happy note, showing, kind of saying that through a lot of the work that our membership and the community have been able to put together, we were able to actually now become one of the safest states to have our immigrants come over to. And like I mentioned, one of the first bill that came about that really affected our immigrant population was called the SB 90, or also the Show Me Your Papers Law. And this really allowed police, state patrol, law enforcement in general to, again, racially profile anyone who they suspected of being undocumented. And during this time, a lot of the driver's license were accessible to our community members. So, you know, if they got pulled over on the street, they could be picked up, detained, and sent to the deportation process. Okay. And then in 2012, we came about what was known as the Secure Community Program, also called SCOM. And this pretty much tied together the criminal pipeline to the deportation, criminal to deportation pipeline as well, because law enforcement was able to share a lot of the data, such as name, you know, fingerprints, that allowed ICE to come in and really pick up anyone that they wanted to pick up in that moment. And because of, and I'm going through this pretty fast, sorry, because we have an hour, but, and because of this, this really created a lot of distrust and fear in our community, So a lot of our members and directly impacted members, they got together to share their stories saying, how can we go to court to figure out our cases? How can we really be our neighborhood and like trust law enforcement to protect us when this bill is pretty much doing the exact opposite? So we got together statewide to repeal this bill, which was a really big win for us, and the start of a lot of really amazing bills that came to be. And one of the most exciting things that we always like to share is in 2014, Colorado was actually one of the first states to get all 64 sheriffs across the county to reject what's known as a detainer or immigration hold. And this was one of the biggest ways that we see ICE try to collaborate and partner up with law enforcement to get information to pick up and detain our immigrant population. But luckily, with the work of our communities, their stories, their narrative, all 64 was actually committed to protecting this our people. And then what I also like to say is, usually like to say is, with every one step forward, we take 5 steps back, obviously. So even though Obama removed ESCOM, the Secure Communities program, he instead replaced it with PEPCOM, which supposedly, was supposed to be a little bit better. And this is also during the time when we see DAPA and DACA kind of starting to get expanded and everything. And PEPCOM was very similar to ESCOM in the way that they still take fingerprints, they still shared a lot of the names, but what they did was they prioritized folks with a criminal record instead. And then our favorite time frame, when Trump came into office in 2017, he repealed Obama's PEPCOM program and brought back the ESCOM and made sure to really enforce the idea that, if any states pretty much went against or defy the partnership between law enforcement and ICE, they would be revoked against getting federal funding. So we see a lot of like that connection between the two. And then during Trump's time, he pretty much enforced a lot of certain priorities to make sure that he was able to deport as much immigrants as possible. And these are some of the priorities that you see here. So folks with a final deportation order that has not been complied, anyone with a criminal offense, anyone charged with a criminal offense, for whether they got the due process or not, and then just anyone in general without documentation in the community. I'm gonna skip this one just because we're short on time, but this one pretty much is just saying, in the past, anyone with a misdemeanor 2 was able to get put into the deportation process. And so Colorado, what we did was we were able to create a 364-day rule. So anyone who actually got charged with a misdemeanor 2 would only get 364 days as their verdict. And so that would like actually prevent them from getting to the deportation process. And another really big win that came about is in 2019, we saw that, we kept seeing like a lot of the partnerships that happened between ICE and law enforcement. So we actually were able to pass a bill that said, one, whenever our community member gets picked up, law enforcement is required to do the Miranda rights. 2, law enforcement cannot share any of the information without a judicial warrant to ICE. And they can't use an ICE detainer without an actual judicial warrant. And in the bill, it included some really powerful language that says the authority of law enforcement is limited to the express authority granted in state law. So this pretty much just really limit the ways that the two agencies can really collaborate together. And we were actually the 4th state to pass this, which is really exciting. And then one of the other really big wins that happened recently is that we saw a lot of our community members saying that every time they went to court to figure out one of their cases, they would either get picked up around the court areas, in the court, or when they're leaving the courts. So this was a really big problem. And so we got together, we shared a lot of testimonies saying that, if our communities can't even feel comfortable going to court, how are they going to get their cases solved? So we were able to pass a law that says ICE cannot be around this area and deport or detain anyone. And that in itself was able to help a lot of our community members feel a lot safer going to their court cases. And obviously, there's still a long way to go with ways that we need to still stop the collaboration between both of them. And these are some of the ways that the sheriff in general, but law enforcement as well, are able to still collaborate with ICE around the bills that we've passed. And a lot of these bullet points you'll see is just really them sharing these information that are critical, you know, like where someone's going to be for their court date, for their probation, for their paroles. And one of the really unfortunate programs that they're still able to participate in is called the F287G program, which we'll go into a little bit later, but it pretty much just allows ICE to act, police to act as ICE in a sense.
Okay. So moving forward to the rights piece, knowing your rights. So we always ask, what's the Constitution, right? And I'm sure many of you in the room know what it is. But really, when we're taking the Constitution here, we're going to be focusing on the amendments from the Bill of Rights that are applicable to everyone, regardless of their documentation status. And so we'll be going into that here. Oh, I just gave y'all a peek, but does anybody know what they are? By chance. I don't know if y'all saw one of them. There's 3.
There's no wrong answers.
Yeah. So we're focusing on the Bill of Rights, right? And so out of the Bill of Rights, there's 3 protections that we present on, because those are the protections that are available to everyone, regardless of their immigration status. And so we're wondering if anybody knows one.
Free speech, right to trial, right to years.
That was great. Yeah, the due process one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So there's some that, you know, like free speech, right? But in the context of like immigration, for sure, and like incident with ICE or the police, right? We're gonna focus on the 4th Amendment, the 5th, and the 6th. And so the 4th one is having the probable cause, right? The 5th is the right to remain silent, and the 6th is the right to know the charges that are against you, and the right to an attorney. And so they're here, and then I'm gonna go in more depth. And starting with probable cause. So probable cause is basically anything that would give a law enforcement agent like a reason to suspect that you have done something that's criminal or illegal, right? And so with that, right, like we always talk about here, like if you're ever in an encounter with ICE or the police, probable cause can literally just be that you ran. Even if you got scared and you didn't do anything, but you ran, that can be probable cause, because they can say, well, if you didn't have a reason to run, then why did you run, right? So you just running makes me think that you have done something wrong. And so they need to have evidence, or at least an idea of that you did something in order for them to like come after you. Sorry. So with that, the first thing that we tell everybody when you have an encounter like this is to make sure that you document and record everything. We all have the right to record the police with video or audio. Sometimes they'll be trained to tell you that you can't and like throw you off. You can, just as long as you're not like getting in the way of them doing their job. That you should be able to do that. The only place you can't really do this is inside a court or a jail, and usually there's signs up letting you know. And yeah, another warning: just make sure when you're recording to be careful and like announce that you're going to do it, right? We don't want anybody to think that you're reaching for something, that you have a weapon, right? Just make sure you let them know that you're using your right to record, and as long as you're not in their way, you may do so. A good resource for this, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, has this mobile app that you can just download, and it actually gives you like a space to record and like, report things right on an app. So, so we're gonna get into some scenarios now.
Okay, there's gonna be more pop quizzes, just so y'all know. So these scenarios are pretty much a lot of the common situations that we see in our communities have been in. So we broke it down to 4 that we felt like was based on a lot of the questions that came about to be. All right, so pop quiz time. And this is gonna get a little tedious, but it's gonna be kind of like muscle memory for the brain. If an immigration agent approaches me outside a court or jail, do I have to answer their question? Perfect. Y'all know this. Okay. No. Again, you never have the right to speak to an immigration agent. And this is where we really want to enforce our Fifth Amendment. And usually when we present these know your rights training to our communities, we like to tell the folks to, 1, try to practice in English. Obviously, a lot of our law enforcement are not, that well equipped to, being bilingual or really all that accessible. So practicing English makes it clear. And we also advise them to kind of speak it in a very certain way by saying, I am exercising the right to remain silent, just because a lot of times we've been seeing the way that folks have been invoking their Fifth Amendment could be used against them if they haven't done it in a way. And also what you also want to remember is like your body language also needs to reflect that you do not want to talk to them, you do not want to interact with them as well. Okay. Do I have to identify myself if an ICE agent asks who I am? What if they already know my name and say they have a warrant for my arrest? And what if they ask if I have papers to show a picture of myself? All right, you're on it. Easy peasy, right? Again, you never have to speak to an ICE agent. They can be looking for you. They can have your name. They can have your picture. You don't have to talk to them because you always have the right to invoke your Fifth Amendment. And again, this is where we get folks kind of like repeat, I am exercising the right to remain silent, so they can kind of make sure they know exactly what to say. Okay, what authority does ICE have to interrogate me? You're stealing the show. Exactly. ICE has no more authority than any other person. So I can literally walk up to one of you and be like, hey, I have your number, your picture, and you have to answer my question. And you're like, no, I don't. It's in the same way with ICE agents. Don't fall into the trap that that makes you think that you do have to talk to them just because they are some sort of enforcement agent. And you can always use your right to remain silent. Okay, so but a really big question that comes to be is, how do you actually know you're under arrest and that you have to answer a certain question? What should you do if you are being detained?
Ask if you are under arrest or if I'm being detained.
This is not fun anymore. I'm just kidding. Exactly. We usually like to see people squirm in silent, I'm just kidding. But that's exactly perfect. Always ask, am I free to leave? If the answer is yes, skedaddle. We don't want to, be there any more than we need to be. And obviously, if the answer is no, you want to, know for sure that you are charged or suspected or something. So that is when you know you're being under arrest for sure. But always ask, am I free to leave or am I being detained? And so this is usually a really important part that we like to tell folks as well. It's how we invoke each of the amendments when we're talking to a law enforcement. And it always should be, I do not consent to a search. I need to speak with an attorney, and then I am exercising my right to remain silent. And we want to put it in this order specifically just because we want to make sure that after we invoke our Fifth Amendment, we do not say anything afterwards. So that one should always be the last one that that folks are able to say before you kind of like shut yourself down. And you folks also have a copy of this presentation. I forgot which organization it was, but they have this really amazing video review where they kind of go through all the scenarios that we're going to talk about, and they'll have it in different languages as well. So people can actually look at the how things come out to be and how it plays out. Italian? Okay, it's Italian. I'm gonna skip this one because it's not as prominent, and then we'll go to the next one.
Cool. Yeah, so the next scenario is the traffic stop, right? So this is gonna be more so with the police, right? The ICE doesn't really do traffic stops. So what if a police officer is interrogating me? Do I have the same rights that I have with an ICE agent? What do y'all think?
Depends on the situation. Under arrest.
Yeah, definitely what did you say? Yeah, for sure. And then, right, since we're in a traffic stop situation, right, some of the identification stuff changes a little bit, but we'll get into that. So yeah, so you can still invoke the same rights. They're just going to be slightly different. And right, you can still ask if you're being detained, if you're free to leave. And if you are free to leave, go ahead and leave. The difference here is that under Colorado law, you are required to identify yourself with your full legal name and your date of birth. So once you've done that, you don't have to do anything else. And if this is like on the street, you don't have to give them a physical identification. You can just, you know, say it verbally. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so and then if you are arrested, right, you know, you can use your magic words, right? I need to speak with an attorney, and now I am exercising my right to remain silent. Super important you don't say anything after that, because if you do speak, you have to reinvoke that. So yeah, oh yeah, and then the, you know, having the right to remain silent, you know, you don't have to self-incriminate, so that's another plug for that. So I have to speak with an immigration agent if they ask to speak to me by phone or if they ask to interview me in jail.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, even if you're in jail, right, you can still exercise this right, and you might want to say, yeah, you know, I want to talk to my lawyer. I am exercising my right to remain silent.
All right, now we're getting into home rates. You'll see like a lot of this is very repetitive, and that's really important just because a lot of the times like these three can actually be the three reasons folks are actually being prevented from being deported or in the deportation process. So what should I do if ICE arrives at my home? Oh, thank you. Exactly. This goes back to the Fourth Amendment, so making sure that they have an actual warrant. But one of the things that we always advise folks is make sure you do not ever open the door and ask for the warrant first. So what a really cute, cheesy way that we like to remind folks to remember is the idea of the Fourth Amendment for door. So have them slide the warrant underneath your door or put it up to a window if you don't have something that you can slide under. And this way, you know for sure, like if that's something that, if it's an actual judicial warrant that you have to legally abide by versus something that they usually just call a warrant for the arrest of alien, which isn't judicially approved. Also, there's another video here in case folks want to watch it later. And so one of the things, again, is always ask for the warrant under the door, up to the window, and there's going to be certain things that you're looking for versus for an arrest warrant versus a search warrant. So with an arrest warrant, what you want to do is always look for the full name of the person that they are looking for, and it has to appear as it is on the birth certificate. It also has to include the date that they're coming to talk to you when they're at your door. And again, the biggest thing, make sure it's signed by a judge. That's how you know it's actually legitimate. For a search warrant, that's usually, you know, it depends on what it is. It can be a car, a purse, it can be your home and everything, but it has to include kind of the address of the house they're wanting to search in or the location of what it is, exactly what they're looking for, again, and the current date, and it has to be signed by a judge. So this is typically the search warrant that we show as an example For this one, you can see here, if I can find it. Oh, it's right, I'm sorry. Here's the description of the house they're looking for, the property in itself, and the date that it is. And again, the biggest important part is the judge's signature. For an arrest warrant, you see here, they have the name of the person, the date itself, and the judge's signature. Now, what's different is, and what people usually see ICE use instead is what's called the warrant for arrest of alien. And the biggest piece of this is, like you can see, obviously, they can fill in their own date, or not fill in their own date, but there's a date there. They have no judge's signature. It's just authorized immigration officer and the printed name and title of that. And it's not legitimate in that sense. That doesn't mean that ICE can't get a legitimate judicial warrant, but they usually try to skip that process. And this is here. So that's pretty much everything I went through. The magic words that we typically let folks know is, I do not consent to a search, and I do not give you permission to enter my home. Okay. This is kind of a cheat, but does anyone know what this is? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so this is a notice that you show up in court via ICE.
Exactly. It's a notice of action, or what's also called a immigration hold or detainer. So this is usually what ICE use to kind of work along with police and law enforcement and sheriffs in general to have them hold someone that they're interested in picking up. And they can send them the release date to ICE, or, you know, just like information again, where they're able to share it. So ICE can come pick them up at that location. The biggest thing we always tell folks is it's not a warrant and it's not approved by a judge. So that means it does not require any probable cause, and it's not mandatory. These are always requests, and what we've tried to do in the past, and we're still trying to do now in Colorado, is work with law enforcement to make sure they're trying to uphold the promise of protecting our communities, in a sense, by not abiding to these requests that ICE is making. And then just a little not so fun fact, but holds are actually used as one of the main tools to, again, link the criminal justice system with the immigration justice system. And we see this happening very prominently under President Obama, where 2 million people were deported. Yeah.
So you can just ignore those, like if you get one of those, you can just like ignore it. You don't have to
Well, typically these immigration holds are sent to the law enforcement people themselves. So I'm not sure myself if any community members have ever seen it up close, but we do know that like sheriffs that we work with, like the City of Denver Sheriff, we've made sure that they commit to not abide by these. What you can ignore is when you see something like this, the warrant of alien, arrest for alien. This one is specifically to, you know, what exactly constitute as a search. You know, so a search can be your purse, your car, again, your house and everything. It just has to, on the warrant that you're looking through, you have to make sure that it's actually specifying exactly what they're looking for. So, you know, if they're saying that they can search through your car on the warrant itself, like the judicial warrant, they can't go into your house to search for something. So it's all considered searches as long as it's actually labeled what they're looking for. And if they don't have a search warrant, they don't have that probable cause to go forward with it. I'm sorry?
If they searched your car without it being on it.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the other thing with the recording that we typically like to tell folks, like if you record, obviously we know the law is not the greatest, the system in itself, but if we're able to record and have as much evidence to back us up, that usually help us in the long run with the cases.
The next scenario is around the right to pay your bond. So can a jail dissuade or deny anybody the right to pay bond if they have an immigration hold? What do y'all think? Yeah. Yeah, everyone has the right to pay the bill if the court has issued it. As long as the court has issued it, you have the right to pay the bail. Sometimes they like stall by like, not making a decision on the bail, but as long as it's posted, you're able to pay it. And that's totally up to you. And then this talks about a bill that was passed so folks were paying the bail and then, but then weren't released and then were actually, right, with the hold, deported. And so this bill pretty much put into law that if folks paid that bail and they were deported, them or their family has a right to get that money back. So that's where this comes from. Yeah. Oh, okay. So then the hold. So there's another detainer, another repeat. So does this, should this detainer influence your right to be let out on bail? Yeah. No, you have the right to pay your bond, as I said. Here's like we all these words in orange are like the magic words you can use. So yeah, if the courts have given me my bond, I have the right to pay it. Yeah, assert that. Yeah, so can they continue to detain me on immigration hold or request for further notification if I have already finished my sentence or paid my bond? So it's like no. Yeah, no, yeah. So they can't keep you there if you've already finished your sentence or pay your bond. They would have to have a new arrest warrant to keep you there. And yeah, unfortunately, this does happen to people where they're not aware of this, right? And I actually took on a case last year where somebody was told to just like wait in a room. They had finished their sentence. They were told to wait in a room. They thought they were being processed out, and then ICE came to pick them up, and they just didn't know. So this one's really important. If you've already served it, they can't hold you. Yeah. So this is more stuff.
Okay, so we actually breezed through this a lot faster than I thought, but I wanted to make sure we have time for questions. But some of the other questions and advice that folks look for are going to be some of these next slides here. So if I am entering the US with valid travel papers, can law enforcement officers stop and search me? The answer is yes. So typically custom officers can stop people at the border just to make sure you're not bringing any contrabands or anything like that. And this can be true, obviously, even if you don't have suspicious things in your luggage.
Can border officers ask questions about my immigration status? And yes, they can, right? That's their job. So if you do have a visa or yeah, if you don't answer that question, you can be denied entry because that's like part of their job, right? But yeah.
And this one is really important just because it's actually coming up in May 2023. We have what is called the SB 251 licenses, which is specifically for our undocumented immigrants who have some form of identification. And this is, you can use this license to drive, to identify yourself to the police at a traffic, and it's considered a state issued ID. Unfortunately, as of May of 2023, like I said, they won't, folks won't even be able to use this anymore as a form of identification to fly online, to fly, the virtual world, to fly on planes anymore. They would have to use their foreign passport, which as we all know, it can be a bit of a dilemma, complexity around that situation.
So yeah, this is just some advice from the National Immigration Law Center, which basically says, you always have the right to speak with a lawyer or have a lawyer present whenever you're speaking to anybody, whenever you're signing anything, and then you are required to carry your current immigration documents. So like if you have like a work visa or a green card. But if you carry anything else other than that, so like a passport, that's something that generally is good idea to leave at home because that passport from another country can actually be used as probable cause to then investigate, how are you here? Like if you're here with documents or whatnot. So passports and stuff, try not to carry those.
And just some things that we like folks to kind of carry away with them is always memorize a phone number if you're able to, in case you get picked up or deported in that case. It could be a family member, it could be the ACLU's number, which we highly suggest, or it could be one of our Colorado Rapid Response Hotline as well. Just try to remember a phone numbers that you know for sure you can rely on. The other thing is make a family plan. We have a packet that you can kind of look to in case you are or you have a family member in deportation or in the detention center. This is important just to make sure that you have things in place, you know what the next steps are as well. I think all of our immigrant families know this, but keep your documents safe. You want to have it available if it's needed to you. And one of the resources that we also share is that there's an executive office for immigration review. So if you call into this number, you can know exactly where your case is at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, so this is us giving a little bit more hope. You still have the right to due process under the Sixth Amendment. And so, yeah, so you're able to, find yourself a lawyer. Unfortunately, immigration cases, those are the few, if not the only cases where a lawyer isn't automatically provided to you as it is usually. But there are other ways, to help, to get help. And so this is what Hugh mentioned as our Colorado Rapid Response Network. And this is something that we run with CERC runs it, and then other folks that are part of this coalition. So here's the number. And so when you call this number, it's like a line. So if you press 1, that it'll transfer you to a service where you can report any incidents that like might seem shady. So if you see ice anywhere, or if you see like an unmarked truck, you can press that number, and then we'll have somebody to go out and investigate kind of what's going on. But if you press 2, you'll be directed to CERC's hotline, which is called the Docu Team. And what we do there is if there's any time where somebody has like an incident with the police or ICE, they're able to call us and document exactly what happened, and we'll have somebody on the other end, asking questions. We have like a questionnaire about the incident, just trying to get as much information as possible because, as we said, documenting can be really helpful. And so that's a service that we definitely would love to support with.
Okay. And here's our shameless pitch at the end of it. There are a lot of ways that you can get connected to the work that you're doing. Obviously, the work that you're doing here is super amazing, the fact that you have a task force. But if anyone also wants to know more about our state campaigns that we're running, we're actually, we got our bills passed recently, so we're moving on to kind of considering what our next campaigns are going to be as well. So that's going to be exciting, but you can stay informed using our text messages or emails. With the hotline, the documentation team that Miriam just talked about, you can actually be a part of that as well if you want to. We have a training set up where you can either be part of the Rapid Response Network, which is 24/7, or be a volunteer to kind of come out and document people's stories and cases, like with families. And this is really important just because not only does it help provide data for us to kind of find patterns that ICE is taking on, like what kind of creative tactics are they doing now, but it also provides a lot of support to our communities, being able to share something really traumatic that has happened with someone who is able to be there and just listen is really helpful. And then the third one is actually you're able to be trained to give this presentation yourself. It's great to have, to be in spaces like this, but a lot of times communities go to the people they know, right? The same faces they know, the leaders of their group and everything. So if anyone does want to be a trainer in having this, we also provide that training as well. Just let me know. I'll have, I think I have business cards I can send out afterwards, where we can get connected. And then that's kind of the end of our presentation. I think the main takeaway with all of this is obviously we can't control how law enforcement reacts, regardless of like what we know, but by having more knowledge and like what our protections are, we can make sure that even if we are violated, we have a chance to move forward with that, and have a case. So the main thing that we always tell folks is the law is a tool, and if you don't use it, it's not going to do you any good, you know. But we always have the right to exercise our constitutions to defend our community, and it's really powerful as allies or people with status to make sure that we are at the forefront of that fight. And that is it. So we have 15 questions, which is perfect. 15 minutes for questions, in case anyone has any. Or we did so well that